Hello and welcome. It's a big pleasure to have you with our panel today. We were going to discuss privacy versus compliance conundrum. What can we expect? My name is Max Berndt. I'm Chief Legal Officer at Blockbit and will be the host of today's discussion. We at Blockbit are one of Europe's leading crypto tax compliance software provider for individuals and crypto asset service providers alike. And Ash will present us the working group's agenda of INATBA Privacy Working Group and the schedule for 2022-2023 now. So Ash, are you finished with the presentation? Otherwise, you can give us an oral introduction as well.
Good morning. Yes, the presentation is with Bara, I believe. So we had three objectives. So as part of the INATBA's working group, we have three objectives for 2022 and 2023. So the first one was to conduct a survey to substantiate the efforts of the working group and understand in more detail how data regulation applies to blockchain technology and how it impacts blockchain projects. The second one was to understand how blockchain can improve data privacy as a whole. And the third one was to strengthen the connection with the European Data Protection Board and obtain input on their expected opinion guidance on blockchain. So as part of that, to drive those three objectives, the first thing we did was we produced an updated report on data privacy regulations applicable to blockchain technology in various jurisdictions worldwide. So this is an updated version of the report, which we published a few years ago. To publicize this, we also hosted a roundtable where we discussed some of the key jurisdictions which were discussed in this report. The second objective, how we're going to make this objective happen is we are holding a series of webinars in January in 2023, which will discuss cutting edge technologies which are allowing privacy in blockchain to be enabled. So we will discuss things like zero knowledge proofs, multi-party signatures, salting and peppering, and the other kinds of solutions which allow privacy in blockchain to be achieved. Something these webinars will also deal with is how we think this technology will be adopted by, I'm going to say, the fiat world, the non-blockchain crypto world, how in maybe 5 years' time, this will become the norm across the board, and how blockchain is driving innovation. First of all, in the blockchain world, it is disrupting so much in the blockchain world, but the technology being, the fantastic technology being developed within blockchain is going to change the world outside blockchain as well, particularly in the area of encryption and the fantastic solutions being produced there. The third objective, what we're doing here is we're currently lobbying with the EDPB. They have been working on guidelines about privacy in blockchain for a few years. They had anticipated delivering their guidelines this year, but it may or may not happen this year. It could be pushed out to next year. So that is a whistle-stop tour of what the Privacy Working Group has been working on.
Thank you very much, Ash. So what we can see now is that blockchain and privacy is a huge topic, especially the question on how compliance, like how data privacy regulation has to override privacy in order to be effective. It's therefore a big pleasure to have such an outstanding board today with me, a panel. So I hand over the word to Wendy. Please introduce yourself and please touch on the topic of how your company is contributing to the data privacy space and how it's dealing with privacy issues in general.
Yes, thank you for inviting me to this panel. It's a pleasure to participate. I am Dr. Wendy Charles. I am Chief Scientific Officer at Burst IQ. I have 30 years of health research experience, including serving as a privacy officer and many other compliance roles. For the company that I currently work for, Burst IQ, it is a health software technology company that specializes on how to use innovative technologies for healthcare and life sciences. We specialize in designing privacy-enhancing technologies and including privacy-enhanced data in order to best protect data using blockchain and AI. We have been in full production for 5 years, and our technology has been used to manage healthcare data on-chain for more than 600 hospitals in the United States. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendy. Huge practical impact you have, especially in the health sector. Very, very important and very, very interesting opportunities to the rise through blockchain. Next, Ella, please introduce yourself. How does your company contribute to data privacy?
Hello, thank you so much. You can hear me, right? So yes, my name is Ella Schroeder and I'm working as a legal counsel at LISC Foundation in Zug in Switzerland. And LISC is a layer 1 blockchain and it's similar, you can compare it to Ethereum. We also have a software development kit, which you can use if you're a software developer and you know JavaScript, which most of software developers know JavaScript. So it's very easy to use and the main purpose of LISC is to be as scalable as possible and also work for interoperability, which is a main problem for some blockchains. So what we are doing is, for example, we have different projects working on the LISC blockchain. We have a project named Identity, which offers electronic signatures and electronic identifications. And all of these projects are working on our blockchain. LISC in general is also trying to be very active within the INATBA organization and in other organizations, trying to really speak for appropriate regulation within blockchain and really trying to advocate to make layer 1 blockchains also heard within the discussion regarding regulation within privacy and other areas as well. And thank you so much. I'm happy to be on the panel discussing such an important topic.
Thank you, Ella. I hand over to Maytain.
Thank you, Max. Yeah, so my name is Maytain Vites. I'm in the legal team of the IOTA Foundation. I'm also the internal data protection officer there. And I'm also a PhD researcher in the field of consumer protection and the civil liability of digital platforms. So IOTA is a foundation registered in Germany and is the legal entity behind IOTA protocol. We have our own DLT protocol, which is called the Tangle, and is an open source protocol and also feeless, which is one of the main characteristics of IOTA. And it can be used for the transfer of both value and also data. So we have our own cryptocurrency, but this is not all that can be done with IOTA, but also you can also use it for the transfer of data, as I said. So in this regard, I would say our main contribution at the moment to the area of privacy is also in the field of identity, specifically with the IOTA identity, which can be used not only by individuals, but also by organizations and also in the IoT, even by machines in order to identify themselves. And with this solution, we can have, on one hand, the trustworthy manner for the verification of an identity, but at the same time also protecting the privacy of the credential holder, of the individual that is identifying herself. And yeah, we also do this in a GDPR compliant manner. Maybe I can dig into that later. But yeah, I'm also very happy to be joining the panel today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have a broad spectrum here from health tech to layer 1 solutions to identity, privacy. So next one, Michael, please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. I am Michael. Perhaps that in this panel I am sort of the tech guy. I am contributing to a standardization committee and working on a wallet architecture for DocaPost. DocaPost is a subsidiary of La Poste Group, the French postal group. In this group, every employee is committed to follow the Serment des Postiers, an engagement to respect privacy of every communication. DocaPost is a big name in digital trust with qualified signature, remote identity verification, and registered letter products, and we are delivering services to public services and health industry. Our main challenge is to shift from centralized to decentralized and self-sovereign architecture, and to find the right balance between privacy and security.
Thank you, Michael. And last but not least, Ash, I hand the word over to you again. Please explore how tech GDPRs dealing with privacy issues and how they contribute to data privacy in the space.
Thank you, Max. So I'm a lawyer. I work with a company called Tech GDPR, which is based in Germany. I'm also, along with Wendy, a member of the expert panel of the European Blockchain Observatory and Forum. So, and also I work with INATBA and do a lot of work in privacy. So as you can see, there's a lot of overlap there between privacy and blockchain. With Tech GDPR, we do a full range of privacy. We work with DAOs, we work with various different types of blockchain entities, helping them with their privacy compliance. But we also work with, the regular. We do healthcare privacy, which Wendy is probably interested about. We do regular privacy as well, for your hotels, your multinationals. So it's quite interesting to do the full range of privacy. And then through NAPA and the European blockchain, it's really interesting to see the differences and the developments within blockchain as well. So that's what I work at when I'm not working at privacy in NAPA.
Thank you very much, Ash. So we have a lot of lawyers here today. So definitely one of the first fundamental questions that I want to ask you is, to what extent can or must regulation override privacy in order to be effective? I think this question is very important since generally blockchains are very transparent and immutable. So how can it be ensured that user transformation is processed only in accordance with data protection legislation on the one hand? And is it necessary in order for Web3 and blockchain-based applications to be very transparent in order to be legally compliant? Maybe I hand the word over first to Wendy.
Thank you. So I am going to start by framing the perspective that when we talk about blockchain isn't any single thing. It is a set of tools and technologies that have some common features and can be combined in any number of creative ways. As we are seeing the evolution of blockchain, we are seeing an explosion in areas where organizations are able to utilize the features of blockchain in ways that also can be private and permissioned. So when we start out by thinking about blockchain as being from the larger public permissionless blockchains, yes, there are many concerns about transparency for certain sensitive data. But when we also think about how blockchains can be designed with privacy and permissioning and specific features for flexibility for being able to utilize how to view data over the software and the data lifecycle management, then we can utilize layers, combinations of governance features, unique combinations of smart contracts that would allow us to utilize those features that can allow for deletion as well. So, for example, at the company I work for, Burst IQ, we provide our customers 6 to 7 different mechanisms by which they can delete data from the blockchain. And I am aware of about 5 additional published methods. It just depends on how the blockchain was designed and which features were utilized. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. So what I get from your answer is that it's, of course, very depending on the fields you're working in and which blockchains you're working with. So I would be very interested how you, Ella, approach this topic.
Thank you so much. That was a very, very important question and very important distinction made by Wendy. And there is such a big difference if we're talking about the permissioned blockchains or permissionless blockchains. We are open source. So we, of course, it is a struggle to implement certain privacy aspects. And I think at the moment, I feel like there is a space for both, especially, I mean, at the moment, the main thought behind blockchain in the beginning was the fact that they wanted to be permissionless and decentralized, and everyone should have access. And that is maybe difficult to combine with certain privacy aspects, but we are also in all ways possible trying to make this happen in our privacy policies, and giving people the opportunity to always speak up if they feel like they have some concerns about their privacy. But honestly, the people that have been using our blockchain and our solutions haven't, until recently, haven't been really requesting any privacy aspects, or haven't been really, I mean, we haven't received any questions, please delete this information or delete that. So at the moment, we feel like it's going well in our blockchain, but it is a struggle since we are open source and anyone has access to the blockchain. But as I said, I think that really corresponds to the main idea behind blockchain, how it was supposed to be in the beginning. But there's so many use cases for blockchain, and it's such a big difference if it's permission or permissionless. So different, very, very important distinction.
Thank you, Ella. So that's very interesting. So you haven't been approached a lot by customers asking for privacy. What about you, Martijn? How's IOTA dealing with that?
Well, we haven't either. But I can say that it's also, I would say, in a development phase, our identity solution. But the way I understand, this is the right to be forgotten can be actually exercised by users, because there is a public key registry that is used by the verifiers so that they can confirm a specific identity. We call it credential. And so if one of the credential holders decide to delete her data, this can be done by simply deactivating the specific public key that was linked to that credential. So the information itself, the data, as we know, is immutably stored in the blockchain, or in the Tangle in our case, which is also transparent and public. But if the public key is deactivated, then it's also not possible to access that data. And this is how we make regulation compatible with privacy. And also important to note is that the revocation itself is also stored in the blockchain, in the Tangle, so that once a credential is revoked, no one else can come and use it again, for full transparency.
Thank you very much. Also very insightful. So, Michael, maybe heading over to you. You said before that your company is helping individuals to sign documents, for example, and to provide privacy in this regard. So how would you say that ledger technologies are a friend, or would you say they are rather an enemy of our privacy? And what are the opportunities that arise in this regard?
Technology is always a friend. It depends of the main requirements that we want to follow. I think that it is clear that the new ADAS rules is asking some privacy and the right for every people to not be tracked by verifiers. And on the technology side, we have some solution to respect this type of requirement. I think that we need to split between public or private blockchain, but for both of them, we have some solution with ZKP or layer 2 channels and the split between on-chain and off-chain data, which can be on file system. our main concern is to follow the self-sovereignty identity principles. I think that if it is our main key requirement is about privacy, we will be able to adapt the technology to every requirement, and it's possible with technologies, and we are really happy to see that the European wallet is following this path.
So what I really liked is that you said that technology can be both, right? It can be good, it can be bad. It's always depending on how it's used.
Yes.
So
we can do everything with software. It depends of our opinion and value.
And the person being in charge, right? At next, I want to hand over to Ash. What we have seen lately, especially in regards to self-hosted or non-custodial wallets, and also with regards to MiCA, and the now upcoming negotiations with the AML package within Europe, that the approach of the European Commission seems to ban unhosted wallets, so to say, from being used. There is more and more tendency towards the verification of users, and therefore privacy to be less and less of a thing when it comes down to the crypto space. So what's your take on that, Ash? Would you think that that there must be regulation, that regulation must override privacy in order to be effective?
I think that's a really good question, Max. And before, one of my roles before was acting as general counsel for a large for MUFG Investor Services, which is a financial services organization. So as part of my remit there, we did a lot of AML. So AML has always trumped privacy in the, I'm going to say, fiat world. So it only makes, why should the crypto world be different? AML is always required for any kind of financial services transaction, and that has been the case for years. You know, we've got the third money laundering directive, you know, and now the fifth money laundering directive, and there's more coming along. So yeah, you know, privacy and GDPR itself, you know, the regulation says that it is these rights are important, but they have to be balanced with other rights. It is not a definitive right, it has to be balanced with other rights. And AML is one of the things where, you know, that is something that needs to be taken into account when AML and when KYC and when all these really important policy and security and safety decisions and, you know, processes have to be put in place to ensure there is safety of, you know, financial systems, of you know, of economies and of institutions, to make sure that the money being transferred is good money, it's safe money, and to make sure that the people, you know, operating these transactions are, you know, doing so, and that they know who they're interacting with. So there are systems in place already. You know, there's the FATF travel rule, for example, the funds travel rule, where there are systems in place to allow you know, the identity of people to be known, but to allow transactions still to happen in a way that is private, even though, you know, you can verify the people in the transactions, but keep everything private. So it is achievable. It is actually happening that, you know, AML is being done within the crypto world, and that, you know, compliance is possible in this area. And I think, you know, it's right that AML is done and then it's done.
Thank you very much, Ash. That's very interesting as well. I think you hit the point when you said it needs to have the right balance, right? So there needs to be a right balance between privacy and compliance. This is what I see from a practical point of view as well, coming from a tax background, where more and more obligations are put on crypto asset service providers to KYC their customers, to ask them for the place of their tax jurisdiction, for example, with upcoming reporting obligations, especially within the European Union and the OECD. So moving on to the practical issues that we see with privacy standards and privacy requirements. Many firms are facing rising scrutiny over data and privacy, such as evolving legal requirements and also the duplication of compliance activities, which ultimately leads to higher operation costs. Therefore, having us there's a certain level that crypto asset service providers, in order to work in certain areas like the European Union, they need to comply with these high requirements, and this leads to high costs. So do you think, Wendy, that high requirements when it comes down to this protection of data privacy are necessary, and are there too many requirements that service providers have to comply with at the moment, or or do they just have to be more harmonized?
Oh, it's a fascinating question for which there isn't a single right answer. From the perspective of utilizing blockchain in the healthcare and life sciences space, we manage highly regulated data. And for healthcare and life sciences, those regulations may overlap to a degree. For healthcare, we recognize that we as a blockchain technology provider are responsible for protecting individuals' most sensitive information about their health, which may not just involve their own health, but genetic information may involve the sensitive information about family members as well. Having spent half of my career in compliance and also as a privacy officer, I recognize the benefit to consumers and patients for the nature of protections. And thus far, with designing health blockchains, we haven't come across a regulatory obstacle that we could not meet with creative and careful design. Where I believe that it's complicated for many blockchain organizations is when they try to retrofit an existing technology to meet regulations. But when you start at the forefront with recognizing what the requirements are for example, for many healthcare regulations, there are specific requirements for how to design the audit trail, and those must be very thoughtful and must be designed in the initial architecture. And so when, as long as an organization has a very thoughtful approach to how they can design within, it's definitely possible. And I believe that currently, or just from my own opinion, that there is an appropriate, well, I'll just finish by saying I do believe that the regulations are necessary, and instead we can modify our technologies to meet them.
That's a quite clear answer, and I think it's like you said. I think it's very depending also on the subject of your company. And what I really liked what she said is that we need to evolve our solutions around the legal framework, right? So I think very big part also is the efficient exchange between developer team and legal team. So this is where I want to hand over to Maytain from IOTA. Since she's in a legal department, how's your exchange between development and legal team when it comes down to privacy issues?
Hard. I would say, yes, unfortunately, we speak just different languages. I mean, we're working on that, but it's a very unexplored field. And also having someone who would have both a background in engineering and legal is practically impossible to find. So we just need to, train ourselves, I would say, both as legal and as engineers, in trying to understand the other side's language. Maybe coming back to your question, I would also note that the challenges in the regulation, the fact that it's always changing, that there are sometimes compliance requirements that are hard to understand, or double requirements, so to say. And this is a challenge not just for CASPs or for blockchain providers, but for every organization. And so I don't think that as blockchain or as CASPs, we need to be excluded from the regulation. But it's important that when drafting new regulation, for example, the European Commission considers also the peculiarities of the technology. And this is the problem we had with the transfer of funds regulation, that of course it's good that there is more regulation and clarity, but if at the end the requirements that are going to be imposed are in practice they're not possible to implement because of the very nature of the blockchain, then it's of no use. So I think the Commission had in mind still the very traditional conception of a banking institution, without considering the nuances of the blockchain, and that's really a shame.
This is very interesting input, also from a technical point of view. It would be interesting, Michael, if you see any standards, international standards arising in the context of privacy, like especially when it comes down to the exchange of data between different service providers. Is this still from your view? I don't know if you with your company are dealing with that, but do you see issues that this is handled differently from country to country, or is there international standards emerging in this regard?
On the French side, we can see that a lot of European actors are aiming to protect the privacy and are following the same value, and some of them are shared with the US, and for example all the ecosystem around the Hyperledger. Then I would say that like for GDPR, I would say that the new trusted services with the European point of view, I think that it will impact. It will influence a lot of other geographies. But I just want to add that within the trust chain, blockchain is usually only one component of this chain. If you want to have in mind the big picture, we need to consider that blockchain with common data standards in terms of verifiable credential, wallet, third parties, relying parties, issuers, trusted registries, all of these components of if they are quite firm. If the good design is good, I think that all of these components can bring their own benefit to help the global trust value chain.
Yes, I feel like this is something very interesting as well. So Ella, you are also with LISC, you are operating internationally, right? So how do you see the exchange of data across borders, and how privacy requirements are hard to match in this regard?
Yeah, thank you. It is indeed a struggle, and at the moment, of course, being in the legal team, we're updating our privacy policy like every month, adding some new things, and there's new points of view all the time, and new thoughts coming up, and it is a struggle, but I think at the moment we have a very good cooperation with our developers, and I also realize the difficulty of really the legal team understanding the tech and the tech team understanding the legal, as Maiten also highlighted. But I have to say, I think we are managing it quite well, as we have like workshops quite often together with both tech and legal teams, discussing important topics and really trying to make both teams understand the most important aspects. And I have to say our cooperation there is quite good. And even though I'm in Switzerland, in Zug, I'm actually in Berlin at the moment with our developers. So we are really trying to make this cooperation work and really provide the best possible privacy compliant solutions there are. But it is definitely a struggle with the cross borders, and all different jurisdictions have different data protection legislations in place. For that, by the way, anyone listening at INATBA, as Ash told you earlier, we have this report we did for last year where we are comparing the data protection rules in different jurisdictions. So there you can take a look. So it is a struggle, but I would say we are managing it quite well and constantly staying up to date.
Thank you very much. So what I've taken away so far is that regulation is a good thing. It's good to have regulation in place that sets standards to protect privacy. It's hard to comply for service providers, also depending on the fields with these standards, since they it would be necessary to have them more harmonized on an international level. So there was a question within our chats if there are any international treaties, and Ash already answered that and was referring to European Data Protection Board. So in this regard, Ash, on the 12th of October, actually this year, the European Data Protection Board approved a statement on the design choices for Digital Euro, tackling the project from a privacy and data protection perspective. In this statement, the EDBP reiterated the importance of ensuring privacy and data protection by design and by default, and cautions against the use of systematic validation tracing of transactions with a digital euro. So, of course, there is a big, many fear that digital euro Web3 would lead to more transparency and the traceability of every single transaction. And there is always a word thrown around called social scoring, right? In regards of a CBDC. So what's the privacy issues in this regard, and what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Currently, the blockchain, when it comes to money, is a bit of a red herring in a way. All our money is already traceable. Everything is traceable already. So when we move to CBDC, it's or any kind of these other digital currencies, it's still traceable. So the only really untraceable money at the moment is cash. And people talk about their ransom and Bitcoin and crypto. It's used for like the dark web. But as you can see with the FTX, the money that was stolen from FTX recently, I think it was 500 million was stolen. And so I've been following what's been happening with that stolen money. And so the money has now been recognized. So chain analysis, I think in particular, are following that money, and other people who also do audit of stolen crypto are following these funds across the different blockchains across the web. So when it comes to privacy, there already isn't any privacy when it comes to funds through digital funds. There already isn't any privacy, and it's the same in the blockchain crypto world. There's not much privacy. You have a few privacy coins, Monero, Dash, Zcash, and the others, who are I think some regulators have taken issue with the fact that these privacy coins cannot be traced. But that is why the funds travel rule, the FATF rule, where they want to apply the funds travel rule to these transactions as well. But apparently, even with these kind of privacy coins, where you have the privacy, the on-ramp, the off-ramp, and then the transaction, the different solutions for each of those three areas of a transaction, you can still have separate solutions where money, before it goes on the on or off ramp, they provide an off-chain solution to that money being transferred. So as Mikhail said earlier, you've on-chain and off-chain. So even if you have on-chain privacy, you still can have off-chain, clarity of who is involved and what is being transferred. So I'll just say it's a little bit of a red herring when people talk about, privacy, and when there's an issue with privacy of, digital assets, because we already don't have that in the non-blockchain world.
Thank you very much, Ash. Actually, I fully agree with that. That the term privacy is thrown around quite a lot. It's more of like a buzzword right now, but people don't really think that everything they do right now is already traceable. So the question is, especially when it comes down to health data, this kind of sensitive information that you, Wendy, are dealing with, for the future. With blockchains as underlying technology, how can we transition the future away from institutions and states more to individuals, so that individuals are actually can choose how their data, private data, is proceeded?
Thank you. And this is such an important issue, and technology is really driving the way that we think and manage. We think about data and manage data transactions. So when we think about how blockchain is the underlying technology for Web3, I believe that the future is going to hold much more Web3 capability for how we manage health information. So with Web3, we're not just seeing the opportunity for individuals to see and interact with their information, but to also control and potentially own their information. Blockchain offers capabilities at a very granular level, not just how data are exchanged and shared, but you can actually include concepts of data ownership. And when I say ownership, it doesn't necessarily mean legal ownership. It can also impart aspects of control and allow for shared control, such as a healthcare organization serving as a custodian for data, but an individual to have much more rights for how they manage and share and potentially even sell their information. Where I'm also optimistic is that when we think about how many aspects of our data are used and sold as it is, as we see from some of the big social media, from internet companies, how they had been using our information in ways that we hadn't previously understood and appreciated. We think, well, actually, health data had experienced much of that too. For example, some of the big electronic health record systems have been using and selling de-identified health information for 20 years. Our hope is that if information which is critical for advances in life sciences, that we utilize blockchain as enabling more of the privacy-enhancing technologies. Though blockchain didn't create many of these privacy-enhancing technologies, but it's really an underlying mechanism for enabling them to become more mainstream, such as homomorphic encryption, zero-knowledge proofs, tokenization, methods of sharding, and distributed storage. So when we think about how data are needed and how for not just healthcare, but for advances in life sciences, the hope is that not just individuals have more control, but we utilize these technology methods in order to better preserve the identities of individuals who are represented in that data. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Very, very interesting take on that. I also maybe transition from that to Michael, asking about digital identity on a blockchain and digital signatures on blockchain. So where do you see the future here? Do you see that we have this digital identity more in the hands of the individuals, or rather be governed by states or big institutions?
I hope. I would like to follow a positive mindset, because for me, it is my conviction, the status of privacy, it is quite like for the planet, it can't be worse. And I think that we are going back to privacy by design architecture. and decentralized and sovereign technology will help. Blockchain can be used with ZKP, but also to follow data minimization principles. It will protect our personal data, like our gender, it is the right term in English, our age, and we will be able to open new services with minimizing the data that we will share. Then, for me, it is going in the good sense and in the common to go to the common interest. I am just a little bit worried because I think that the civil society is not empowered by this topic. There are a lot of news around the planet war, and it is okay. It is so much important, but I think that we need a public debate with the civil society to let people to be engaged in this new subject that will impact all of our life.
So you want your future, so to say, looks like more into a self-sovereignty when it comes down to a digital identity, is what I took away from that. So maybe Meiten, from IOTA, are you dealing with the issue of digital or the question of digital identity?
Yes, as I said before, we're currently working on IOTA identity, which is a solution for individuals and organizations as well. And yeah, we also implement one of the principles that Michael mentioned as a privacy enhancing strategy, data minimization, but also selective disclosure and progressive trust. These are all strategies that allow the user that is identifying herself to just reveal what is really necessary for the purpose of that specific transaction. But for that, it's important that the purpose itself is beforehand determined.
And you, Ella, with LISC?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's so important to, and I'm very happy that we are discussing a lot of privacy issues in general, and that people are getting more and more aware of privacy, and it's getting more popular to speak about it. I think it is important to both keep in mind the underlying idea of blockchain and the fact that we are moving towards the direction that everyone wants to be in control of their own data, which is also something that the Web3 is really advocating, to be yourself in charge of yourself and your own data and everything that is connected to you. And I think that's an important thing. However, also being a lawyer, I kind of have to also advocate a little bit for regulation, I guess. So it's a difficult combination, but I love the challenge. And I think the future, as I said, maybe in the beginning, I think there is a place for both. So I think there is also a place for even blockchains that are permissionless and where you just have to be aware that in this space or on this blockchain or in this solution, there are certain risks. And then there are other blockchains where there are less risks. And I think like in investment, there are more risky investments and there are less risky investments. It completely depends on the field you are in. And I think there's a place for both, but I think in general it's very important that we are having these discussions about privacy. And yeah, I'm happy that people are getting more aware and taking it seriously. And let's continue the discussions for sure.
That's very true. I think it will be very depending on the fields that you work in, or especially when it comes down to the differentiation between CFI and DeFi, right? Because this is a huge topic, especially when it comes down to privacy and decentralized finance. One last question in this regard, I'm very curious to know Ash's opinion on is the global landscape, so to say. Ash, since you're working on an international level and you're consulting European Commission in this regard, do you see that there will be significant geographical disparities when it comes down to privacy legislation? And do you think that we should expect or strive for global standards?
That would be great. One of the big issues. So privacy started in Europe, it's new, and now it's spreading to other countries. It is a shame that there is no standardization. One of the, as we've discussed before, one of the big issues for businesses is compliance costs. And having non-standardization means, huge compliance costs, especially in the blockchain world, because it is decentralized, it is global. That means you have huge compliance costs then when it comes to privacy. And then privacy is a bad word because it is such a large cost, because I'm just going to say politicians, they want to put their own stamp. Something works fine or maybe it doesn't work fine, but they have to put their own stamp on something new. They can't just say, in the US, for example, California brought in something from Virginia, etc. And there's I think 15 live another 4 states go live in the US in January in 2023, and then there's 15 more states who are bringing in their own new privacy laws as well, and that's just one country. So you're going to have like the US with maybe 50 states with different laws. How do you comply with that? And that's just one country. And then you look at Europe, and we've got like there's 50 regulators in Europe. And yes, GDPR is more or less the same, but you do have differences in each country. They're not big, but it is a thing. So when you look at that, yes, standardization and harmonization. Why can politicians not just say, look, it's working fine, let's just go with that. We will make life easy for our businesses. I think the result of that is going to drive a huge adoption in people forcing their customers to use digital identities. It's going to be too expensive for companies to have any data. So I think within 5 years, we haven't actually seen a lot of fines or penalties yet. The top-down regulation by regulators, that's been slow to come. I think when the US brings in their privacy laws, that's going to change. The regulators there are very proactive. Across the board, privacy is new, so we'll see what happens there. Also, we haven't seen any bottom-up, us as individuals. Europe doesn't have a litigious culture, so people don't generally tend to litigate. However, again, I think that's something that's going to change with the recession. People might see that, GDPR is a bit of, maybe they can leverage it to get some money. I think, again, the US does have that, traditionally litigious culture. American people, and I'm going to say the law firms there, the ambulance chasing law firms, they're going to use these new privacy laws to generate revenue. So it's going to be too expensive for companies to hold data. So I think, and this is my personal view, companies are going to say, we do not want data. And they're going to force individuals to use a lot of these privacy, digital identities and tools where they do not want our data. We will own and keep our data because they're not going to want it. It's going to be too expensive. So in that way, maybe it's good that the privacy world, the politicians are, thinking, I want to put my own stamp on it. That is going to be a huge driver for privacy in a way, because compliance is going to be too expensive.
Thank you very much, Ash. This is definitely a topic that will be discussed quite thoroughly in the next years. I also agree that, especially with the cross-border nature of Web3, we will see that we will need more harmonization on an international level, and we need to agree on certain standards, and that the compliance costs when it comes down to keeping up with privacy requirements will be quite high, and this will definitely a driver to be privacy more of an issue of the individual. Very, very interesting to see the development with digital identities and how they will be used in the future. So ultimately, we all we all had our views on a future with Web3 and privacy in this regard. I think there's going to be quite exciting times ahead of us, especially when it comes down to the use of blockchain and how it can be used to secure privacy on the one hand, and on the other hand, with AML standards, like Ash said, to actually be able to trace certain transactions the way they haven't been traceable before. So thank you very much for the panel today. We are sharp at 11, so we finished on time. We had a great discussion. I took away a lot of learnings from that. Maybe I hand over to Bara from INATBA. Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure.